Do you remember Dirty Jobs, the show that took us into America's grittiest workplaces? Ever wondered what happened to the people who made it unforgettable? The crew who risked everything, and the workers who opened their worlds to millions? Join us as we reveal the heartbreak, the sacrifice, and the courage each one had to bear from 2003 to 2012, and again from 2020 to 2023. Dirty Jobs became more than just television. It became a tribute. Host Mike Rowe traveled to all 50 states, working alongside hundreds of Americans in over 300 different jobs that most people never see, never think about, and certainly never want to do themselves. Behind the cameras, a small crew of devoted filmmakers, Dave Barsky, Doug Glover, Troy Paff, Chris Jones, Chris Whitneck, and others endured the same filth, the same danger, and the same relentless physical toll. The show's demands were extraordinary. The crew hauled expensive equipment through muddy caves, climbed unstable structures hundreds of feet in the air, descended into sewage treatment plants, and faced down wild animals. They worked in temperatures that ranged from Arctic freezing to desert scorching. There were no stunt doubles, no safety nets beyond basic precautions, no glamorous trailers waiting at the end of the day. Just hard work, real danger, and an unwavering commitment to honoring the American workers who keep our country running. What viewers didn't always see were the near misses, the actual injuries, the emotional scars, and the toll that 8 years of relentless filming took on everyone involved. And tragically, some of the workers featured on the show would never get to see their episodes celebrated, their legacies honored, or their families comforted by the impact they made. George Brooks Jr., the gentle giant who climbed until he couldn't. George Brooks Jr. never imagined he'd become a television personality. The 58-year-old water tower maintenance specialist had spent 34 years with Southern Corrosion in Mississippi, doing essential work that almost no one ever noticed. Every day, George climbed towering structures, some reaching 240 feet into the sky, to clean and inspect the water tanks that provide clean drinking water to entire communities. It was dangerous, exhausting work that required nerves of steel and a body that could endure decades of physical punishment. When Mike Rowe and the Dirty Jobs crew came to McGee, Mississippi in 2021, George welcomed them with characteristic humility and quiet humor. Halfway up a 200-foot ladder, both men huffing and puffing in the oppressive heat, Mike asked him, "How many times do you look around and say, 'I'm getting too old for this?'" "Every day," George chuckled. "Every day." But he kept climbing. He kept working. Because finding people willing and able to do what he did was nearly impossible. His crew depended on him. The communities he served depended on him, and George Brooks Jr. was the kind of man who didn't walk away from responsibility. The Dirty Jobs episode featuring George aired on the 16th of January 2022. It should have been a moment of celebration, a chance for George to see himself honored on national television, to receive the recognition his 34 years of service deserved. But George never got to watch it. He had passed away 4 months earlier, on the 18th of September 2021, at Vidant Medical Center in Greenville, North Carolina. He was only 58 years old. Mike Rowe wrote a heartfelt tribute on social media, expressing his condolences to George's family and the team at Southern Corrosion. He described George as funny, unassuming, and genuinely concerned for his crew's safety. "I was glad to meet him, and glad to introduce him to America," Rowe wrote. "I'll think of him next time the tap water runs from the faucet, clear, cold, and clean enough to drink." George is survived by his 2 children, Jillian and Evan Brooks, and his partner Liz Bo Guglielmo. He loved the Philadelphia Eagles, the Phillies, and the Carolina Hurricanes. He had a soft spot for animals, and he spent more than a quarter century making sure families had safe, clean water, climbing ladders most of us would be terrified to even look at. The episode became bittersweet, a memorial to a man who embodied everything Dirty Jobs celebrated: dedication, humility, and quiet heroism. And just as one life ended too soon, another tragedy had already unfolded. Captain Wayne Magwood, the shrimper who sailed into history. Wayne Magwood never sought fame, he sought shrimp. The grizzled captain of the Winds of Fortune was a fixture in the waters off Shem Creek in South Carolina, a veteran shrimper who loved his boat, loved his work, and loved his community with fierce devotion. When Mike Rowe came calling in 2005 for Season 2 of Dirty Jobs, most fishing boat captains would have turned down the intrusion. Cameras on deck meant distractions, complications, and risks. But Wayne Magwood said yes, not for himself, but for his industry. The episode that resulted became legendary. Wayne didn't soften his rough edges for television. He bossed Mike around with gleeful authority, barking orders and offering zero sympathy when the host struggled with the physical demands of shrimping. At one point, tangled in rigging and clearly seasick, Mike fumbled with a line. Wayne shouted, "For God's sake, boy, stand up like a man. I thought you were a tough guy." Mike shouted back, "I don't know about that, Captain, but if my mother sees this episode, she's going to track you down and kick your pirate ass." The exchange became iconic. Fans started selling t-shirts with the, quote, "Mike's mother even got one, though she claims she lost it." But the real legacy was bigger than one funny moment. Wayne Magwood's willingness to welcome the Dirty Jobs crew aboard before Deadliest Catch made fishing boat reality shows commonplace helped launch an entire genre of television. His episode paved the way for shows like Big Shrimpin', Rajun Cajuns, and dozens of other programs celebrating the dangerous, vital work of commercial fishing. Mike Rowe later wrote that you could draw a straight line from Wayne Magwood's hospitality to over 30 different TV shows chronicling the lives of fishermen and women. Cable television became a crustacean nation, and it started on the deck of the Winds of Fortune. But Captain Wayne Magwood's story ended far from the water he loved. On Friday morning, the 11th of September 2020, Wayne was struck by a car on Coleman Boulevard in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina. The impact killed him. It wasn't the dramatic, sea-swept end one might imagine for a fishing boat captain, as Mike Rowe noted, quoting Deadliest Catch's Phil Harris. Not even captains get to choose the manner of their passing. Wayne's death shook the tight-knit shrimping community and devastated the Dirty Jobs family. Mike wrote a lengthy Facebook tribute describing Wayne as possessing a terrific mix of impatience, tolerance, and grace. He was a pioneer who helped change television, but more importantly, he was a man who loved his work and did it with pride until the very end. The losses of George Brooks Jr. and Wayne Magwood remind us that the workers featured on Dirty Jobs weren't actors playing roles. They were real people with real families, doing real work that carried real risks. But the toll of Dirty Jobs extended beyond the featured workers. The crew themselves paid prices most viewers never imagined. Chris Whitneck, the cameraman who bears the scar. Every job has its hazards. Chris Whitneck just never expected his would involve a mentally disturbed primate. As camera B operator, Chris's job was to stay close to Mike Rowe, capturing intimate footage that brought viewers into the experience. He'd filmed in sewage treatment plants, on oil rigs, and in countless dangerous environments. But nothing prepared him for a vervet monkey named Paddy at a sanctuary in South Africa. The attack came after filming had wrapped. Chris was packing up equipment when Paddy struck, sinking his teeth deep into Chris's leg. The pain was immediate and intense. The scar would be permanent. In a decision that defined the show's authentic approach, the crew included footage of the aftermath in the episode. Months later, viewers watched as Mike examined Chris's leg, acknowledging both the emotional scars and the physical damage the attack had caused. Mike even presented Chris with a commemorating memento, a banana. The joke was funny, the injury was real. And to this day, fans who meet Chris Whitneck in person ask to see the monkey bite scar, a permanent reminder that even behind the camera, Dirty Jobs was genuinely dangerous. Chris continued working in the industry after Dirty Jobs, contributing to shows like The Road Trick and Tornado Chasers, carrying that scar and the stories that came with it. Mike Rowe, the host who bled for the mission. Mike Rowe's injuries became part of Dirty Jobs lore, but they were no laughing matter when they happened. The worst came early, during the very first season. While working with a blacksmith, Mike wanted a dramatic shot of his face close to the camera as he ignited a portable blast furnace. He flicked the switch. Accumulated gas created a massive fireball that wrapped around his head. The heat fused his contact lenses to his eyes. Pulling pieces of plastic out of your eyes? Bad deal, Mike later recalled. The pain was excruciating. The risk of permanent damage was real, but Mike recovered and kept going. Over the years, he cracked ribs, broke his toe, shattered knuckles, and lost 3 fingernails. He received stitches 3 or 4 times. While testing a shark suit during Shark Week, he was repeatedly bitten by frenzied sharks. While pulling a 4-ton pump from a 5-story sewage shaft, the experience was so traumatic that afterward, the entire crew sat in a bar for 20 minutes in complete silence, processing what they just endured. But Mike's greatest concern wasn't his own injuries. It was his crew's safety. After several accident-free seasons, the team suddenly experienced a rash of injuries, broken bones, stitches, near-fatal accidents. Mike realized they'd become complacent despite constant safety protocols. This led him to challenge the conventional wisdom of safety first, arguing that the phrase had become a hollow bromide that actually made people less vigilant. In 2009, he produced a controversial special called Safety Third, arguing that genuine safety required personal responsibility and awareness, not just compliance with rules. The special ruffled feathers at OSHA and sparked fierce debate, but it started important conversations about workplace safety at NASA, with the Teamsters, and at major railroad companies. Today, at 63, Mike continues his advocacy through the Mike Rowe Works Foundation, which has awarded nearly $7 million in work ethic scholarships to people entering the skilled trades. He hosts multiple shows, narrates documentaries, and maintains his podcast, The Way I Heard It. But the injuries he sustained and the friends he lost remind him daily of the real costs behind the show that made him famous. The crew, Brothers Bound by Dirt and Danger, Dave Barsky, Doug Glover, Troy Paff, Chris Jones, Adam Bradley, Dan Eggman, Ryan Walsh, Amber McLaren, and others. These names don't mean much to casual viewers, but to Dirty Jobs fans, they were part of the family. Dave Barsky, the field producer and Mike's wrangler, appeared on camera frequently enough to become a minor celebrity himself. His 100th Dirty Job celebration featured a guitar-banjo duet with Mike that became iconic. When Dirty Jobs was canceled in 2012, Mike wrote a heartfelt farewell describing the crew as a band of brothers who endured conditions that felt a lot like combat. Doug Glover, the director of photography, and Troy Paff, the camera operator, formed a legendary team. Together, they hauled equipment through impossible conditions, crawled through caves with 100 pounds of gear, and captured footage in environments that would make most cinematographers quit on the spot. Dan Eggman, production assistant and occasional camera operator, described his first day, crawling through muddy Kentucky caves, hauling massive equipment loads. It was baptism by filth, and it only got worse from there. These crew members weren't just employees. They were essential workers themselves, doing a different kind of dirty job, documenting America's unsung heroes while risking their own health and safety. When Dirty Jobs returned in 2020 with the Road Trip miniseries, Mike coaxed several crew members back. Troy Paff, Doug Glover, and Chris Jones all returned, along with new faces. The reunion was bittersweet, a chance to relive old memories while acknowledging how much the work had cost them. In a 2011 episode titled Doomsday Seed Banker, a peculiar moment appeared. After Dave, Doug, and Troy were locked in a vault, text appeared on screen. In memoriam, Dave Barsky, Doug Glover, Troy Paff. It was a joke, dark humor about being locked in, but it revealed the crew's awareness of their own mortality, their willingness to laugh at the dangers they face daily. Today, Dave Barsky works as an executive producer at NBC Universal. He's 54, married to his wife Valaire since 2003, and continues to advocate for the same kind of authentic storytelling that made Dirty Jobs special. Troy Paff is director of photography at Pilgrim Studios with his own production company. Doug Glover continues his cinematography work. They've all moved on to new projects, but they carry the experiences and the scars of Dirty Jobs with them. The legacy. What Dirty Jobs taught us. Dirty Jobs ended its original run in 2012, returned briefly in 2020, and concluded for good in 2023. But its impact endures. The show launched over 30 spin-offs and imitators, creating an entire genre of reality television that celebrates workers instead of mocking them. Billy Bretherton, the exterminator featured in a Season 1 episode, went on to star in Billy the Exterminator on A&E. Deadliest Catch, American Chopper, and countless other shows owe a debt to Dirty Jobs' blueprint. More importantly, the show changed how millions of Americans view blue-collar work. It reminded us that civilization depends on people willing to climb 240-foot water towers, trawl dangerous waters for shrimp, clean sewage systems, and do thousands of other essential jobs that most of us never see or appreciate. George Brooks Jr. and Wayne Magwood didn't die in the course of filming Dirty Jobs, but their deaths remind us that these workers face real dangers every single day. They're not characters on a screen. They're fathers, partners, friends, and heroes who keep climbing, keep sailing, keep working, often past the point where their bodies beg them to stop. The crew who filmed their stories face dangers too. Chris Whitneck's scar, Mike Rowe's burned eyes, the broken bones and stitches, and near misses, these weren't staged for drama. They were the real costs of documenting real work. And through it all, a deeper truth emerged. The dirtiest jobs in America are done by some of its finest people. People who don't seek recognition but deserve it. People who chuckle when asked if they're getting too old for this, then climb the ladder anyway. People like George Brooks Jr., who made sure our water was clean. People like Wayne Magwood, who fed our families with the bounty of the sea. Epilogue. Keep climbing. When Mike Rowe wrote his tribute to George Brooks Jr., he closed with 2 words: keep climbing. It was a farewell, but also a challenge. To keep honoring the workers who keep America running. To keep appreciating the dirty jobs that make modern life possible. To keep climbing, even when we're tired, even when we're hurting, even when every instinct tells us to stop. George can't climb anymore. Wayne can't sail anymore. But their legacies endure in the water we drink, the food we eat, and the awareness they help create about the dignity of hard work. And somewhere, right now, there's a water tower being cleaned, a shrimp boat hauling nets, a septic tank being pumped, a furnace being maintained, all the dirty jobs that make civilization possible. The workers doing those jobs deserve our respect, our gratitude, and our remembrance. Dirty jobs may have ended, but the work and the workers continue. If this story touched you, if you have newfound appreciation for the people who do the jobs most of us avoid, take a moment to share this video. Subscribe to honor the memories of George Brooks Jr., Wayne Magwood, and every worker who keeps our world running. And the next time you turn on your tap or enjoy fresh seafood, remember the people who made it possible. They kept climbing, they kept sailing, they kept working. For us,